Hello, today's Bible study comes from 1 Corinthians chapter 7, verses 25 through 28, and reads as follows. Now about virgins, I have no command from the Lord, but I give judgment as one who by the Lord's mercy is trustworthy. Because of present crisis, I think that it is good for a man to remain as he is. Are you pledged to a woman? Do not seek to be released. Are you free from such a commandment? Do not look for a wife. But if you do marry, you have not sinned. And if a virgin marries, she has not sinned. But those who marry will face many troubles in this life. And I want to spare you this. Wow. So Paul starts off and he is talking about um, advice here. He's giving you advice. And he's telling you marriage ain't bad, but look at look at these things. He says concerning virgins, um, and Paul is talking about somebody who is unmarried, and he refers to them as virgins. Um, and this should be, but I'm sure um, I don't think they were all virgins just because of the area they were in and how things were happening over there. There was a lot of sexual immorality, as stated previously earlier in the chapter and other chapters. But the main thing is Paul is saying, if you're not married, you should be a virgin. So he's just saying this. He's just saying virgins to say that. Um, so he says, I have no commandment from the Lord, yet I give judgment. Um, Paul is still inspired. So Paul is teaching here. And he's dealing with some situations that we should know about. Um, he cannot give any type of commandment here. But this is just inspirational knowledge that he's sharing and some of these principles that he's sharing. It is good for a man to remain as he is. He's saying if you are never married, then stay like you are. And in this case, it has to be with unmarried, which would make him a single person. And the reason I say this is because there is present distress. And not with marriage, but there was some persecution going on or a problem that was facing this city where he was writing a letter. And because of these situations, Paul said, hey, there's a good reason. There's an advantage to remaining the way you are. And then he says on the same note, though, also with this distress, if you're married, remain that way. Um, and Paul is giving out some information because of a situation of distress here. So he's saying, if you're single, stay single. If you're not, then don't leave your wife and your children. Um, these things that are coming at you, they're coming at you, but they won't last always. But remember, there were some persecutions going on at this time. Are you bound to a wife? Do not seek to be loosed. Are you loose from a wife? Do not seek a wife. And Paul is saying this again. He's repeating it, which he said earlier in this chapter. Um, God is going to use you where you're at, so you don't have to run from where you're at. And don't be worried about changing your station in life. And as we spoke yesterday about slavery, married, unmarried, single, divorced, all of that. So Paul starts talking with the language that they're speaking with. And they would say the things of bound and loosed. And this was talking about commands. And he goes on and he says, if you do marry, you have not sinned. Paul is not saying you can't get married and that you shouldn't get married. And nobody should think that. But nevertheless, because there's a nevertheless here, such will have trouble in the flesh, but I would spare you. And Paul is saying, and he felt this way, um, he himself found greater advantages of being by himself. Um, and you could look at Paul's life and see why married life probably wouldn't have fit him well, because Paul was going and doing and traveling and locked up, and Paul was on a mission. He was working. But as he told you before, you all got your own thing from the Lord, so you do that. But for him, it was more beneficial. But please note that Paul never that tells you that being married or single makes you holier in either circumstances. And this was one of the problems that the church of Corinth was having. And it was a big mistake on their part. So please note that with Paul. But Paul is telling you things and giving you advice that will help you in either state. But no matter where you are, God can use you. No matter what your status is, God can use you. And you don't become holier or more spiritual or closer to God being married or single or circumcised or uncircumcised. It is your obedience to the Lord. Amen.